Welcome to the Brightside podcast. This week we're looking at the fantastical parts of film. Your hosts for this week are Laila, the most sophisticated and cultured woman I know, who I've still never seen without high heels.
And the most kind-hearted, all-round perfect human being, Millie.
Oh, stop it.
It's okay, I'm paying her the bribe later. So we've got 3 star guests this week, and I've just realised the way I've written that, it sounds like you're 3 stars instead of 5 stars, but sorry about that. Can you introduce yourselves and a film that means a lot to you?
Hi, I'm Tom Pridgeon. People call me Pridge. A film that means a lot to me is Avengers Endgame.
I'm Sahrish. There are various pronunciations of my name. And the film that I've chosen is Pride and Prejudice because it's my comfort film. I love it. I watch it on loop. Doesn't matter what, anytime, any emotion.
Hi, I'm Kerenza Wenn. Most people call me Kerenza. And the film I've chosen is Moulin Rouge.
You on about the Ewan McGregor one or the one that was made in like 1994?
Oh, the Ewan McGregor one. We don't talk about the other one.
Yeah. So Kenza, why did you choose the Moulin Rouge?
I think I can't remember when I first watched it. I think I must have been about 15 or so. And I chose it because honestly, it was the film that made me fall in love with film, because I think it was the first film I'd seen that was very heavily stylized, and the idea of having this film that's just this like bombastic melodrama where like there's always something going on and there's like so much happening on screen. It's just such a celebration of like theatre, and I just adore it.
Oh, I love that. Tom, why did you choose Avengers Endgame?
I guess because the MCU means quite a lot to me. I mean, I was a big fan of Star Wars as a kid, but I was never old enough to really sort of be there for like the Star Wars hype. But I think this is the sort of only sort of nerd culture film cinematic phenomenon that's like I was really there for. Obviously, Infinity War came out. We were kind of told that, and this is to round up the whole saga, and it's going to be the big finale. And then it wasn't. We had Endgame, and I had to wait a whole year. And it's the only film I've ever really waited a whole year for in sheer anticipation of what is going to happen.
I think out of like cinema experiences, I think Infinity War and Endgame were like such a unique experience. And I think in our lifetime, I don't think there's been a more anticipated film.
It was such a phenomena. I don't understand why some people feel like they have to put down films that are based on comic books.
People like superhero films because it makes them feel good, and surely that's what film's about.
Yeah, and no one can deny it's the highest grossing film of all time, and that's because people love the characters so much. If it was poorly written, there's no way they'd get that number of people going to the cinema or going to the midnight viewing.
I didn't go to the midnight viewing of Endgame, but I did go to the midnight viewing of Infinity War. I would never have thought to do that before, like stay up and go and watch a film at ridiculous o'clock in the morning.
But that's worth it. I think that's
definitely worth it.
I saw Infinity War quite late. My plan to watch it with my friend, but this is the only time she's ever done this. She completely betrayed me, and she went to watch it by herself because she could not bear to wait any longer. So no. I had to go and see it separately, like by myself, because I was like, my only like MCU watching friend has abandoned me here. So then I just sat there and I was in the cinema by myself watching the whole film. I had no one like to share it with, but like it was sort of so overwhelming. I didn't need to share it with anyone. I was just like thinking about the film for like a solid 4 hours afterwards. I was like, I need time.
And you had your own private screening.
Pretty much.
I mean, like, I've never seen cinemas like actually sell out of tickets like they had for Endgame.
It was ridiculous. I remember like 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, I was saying, "Oh, what's in the cinema?" And like there was nothing. Every single.
And I think it's okay now to talk about the ending. I mean, at this point, but
spoilers if you haven't seen it.
But I think especially when. Okay, you know that scene with the portals and everyone comes back? The number of cheers that I sat through and like joined in, I was like screaming at the cinema going, yes.
I am really against that though. You know how they have on YouTube like cinema reactions and everyone's like, woo, go on! Like, no, shut up and watch the film. I've paid to listen to Chris Evans, not to Barry from Topster. A scandal. Honestly, right, we were seeing it for the first time, and you know the bit when Captain America, he goes, Avengers, and grabs the hammer, and then he says, assemble.
Yeah.
Kind of a cool moment. Yeah. Some little kid at the front goes, assemble, about half a second too early, so it completely ruined the whole thing. I had a drink in my hand, and I nearly just dumped it on the kid. Like, shut up, shut up.
This is why no one wants to go to the cinema with you, Pridge.
Yeah.
That's huge, though. So
all I've learned from this is I'm not going to go to the cinema with Pridge.
It was such a sick moment, though. The whole ending of it, and then the heartbreak at the end.
So just to move on from Endgame, so we can go going. Last we had Sahrish talking about Pride and Prejudice.
Yes, I just love that book.
Pride and Prejudice, you can imagine, like, you've got fire on, it's a nice cold day outside, you've got a cup of tea.
Do you like literature to film adaptations? Because a lot of people, when there's like a book and they make a movie out of it, they go, I don't like it, they didn't have this moment.
It's one of those, like, because I read a lot. I have stuff to do, but like I will avoid them in order to read a book. So especially with Pride and Prejudice, I've seen every adaptation. I love all of them equally. And I think the only thing where I differ with a lot of people is that I look at film and books as two completely separate mediums. So I see films as not necessarily adaptations of books, but just interpretations. Because, you know, as someone, I mean, I like film and theatre, and when you see how that's put together, even with a script, and you can see how like people take on aspects of the character or add personalities to characters you wouldn't have thought to add. You have to really sort of go, okay, the director's put his own vision on it, or like the characters have put their own spin on it. Like sometimes, especially if I really love the book, I will wait so that I don't see it straight away so that I can divorce the two from each other, right? So I adore the Percy Jackson books. They are incredible. The universe is amazing. I don't think people are going to argue me that much. I don't ask Bridge. And then I think actually the film, the first one, if it wasn't based on the books, it's not a bad film.
Yeah, that's fair.
I understand where you're coming from.
Do you mean, like, I was like, if I hadn't read the books and that was the only experience of it?
I think that's a really good way to approach it, actually, because it means you've not got a bar set for a film before you go in.
It's kind of like the ultimate example of that is the original Stephen King novel, The Shining, and then the Stanley Kubrick film. As a film adaptation, The Shining is not a good adaptation of the book, but no one would argue that that film is not a masterpiece. And likewise, no one would argue that the book is not a masterpiece. They're different interpretations of the source material.
You know the horror film It one with the recent one, the Machete one with Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise. So in the actual book of It follows the adults and they have flashbacks as kids, but they did it as kids and then adults. I thought that was probably the best horror film, not necessarily the scariest, but the best horror film I'd seen in a long time.
I think that those ones are really well made. Like, I'm not a fan of Stephen King. I mean, horror is, I think, in my opinion, the worst film genre.
See, I quite like it, but I feel like it's sometimes a bit underappreciated in award ceremonies, and I'm trying to think of some examples now. I think, Get Out was one of the only horror films to win, and even that you could argue is more of a thriller.
Get Out was incredible, though. I watched that at my birthday party. I watched it in the cinema. It was fantastic. It was like a sociological discussion on the way we treat people. It was amazingly done.
So good.
It was also really good, if anyone saw Us.
Yes, that was one of my favourite films of last year.
I thought Lupita Nyong'o in Us was by far the best performance of last year. Everyone talks about Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, but in my opinion, Lupita Nyong'o was robbed of everything. She was so fantastic in Us.
I think it's that age-old problem of not having enough diversity in the Oscars between genre, sex, race. I think generally, though, the actual films we're seeing are getting better at that.
They actually, I don't know if anyone watches Lindsay Ellis. She made a really fantastic video comparing Pocahontas to Moana and how Disney learned from their mistakes from Pocahontas when making Moana. And they consulted a council of Polynesian scholars to make sure that they were as accurate as they could be with regards to the culture and things like that. They still made a lot of mistakes, but they did a lot better.
One film, it's 15 minutes long. It's on Netflix. It's called Sitara, Let Go's Dream. And anyone wants to see, by the I only mention this film because it's the first film I've seen where, like, I know we're talking about representation and like the importance of like Moana and Pocahontas. So this is based about a girl she's Pakistani but like poor, and she's forced into she's a child and she's forced into a child marriage. And I didn't expect to cry, and I'm not joking. By the end, I was crying so hard I could not see. I was like, okay, that was a lot, but it's weirdly beautiful at the same time.
Oh, amazing.
Before we move on, can I just throw in that one of my favourite films of all time is Coco? I'm not sure if anyone's seen it. It's
yeah.
Yes, I love Coco, and I love Moana, by the way, Kenza. I need to say that. Love that.
Yeah, Disney Pixar film, and it's one of the best animated, I think, films of all time.
It follows a boy in Mexico during the Day of the Dead, and it's a really heartwarming film about family and music, and I've watched so many video essays saying how well it portrays Mexican culture as well. Plus, I've never seen a Disney film where they've used music better to reach an emotional climax. At the end, I watched it in the cinema and I was just sobbing to myself. And when the lights came up, my friend looked at me and all my mascara had run. I was like a panda.
Sure.
Coco is also one of my favorite animations of all time. Nothing makes me cry more than the ending of Coco. The ending it was just fantastic. And the detail on the animation, especially when they go to the land of the dead, it's just so fantastic. Like the amount of detail in there and the time and dedication to make it. So on the topic of Pixar films, our next segment is going to be inspirational news stories surrounding film. So let's get started. So the inspirational news story that we've picked out is that Pixar has won the 2020 Nobel Prize for Computing.
That's amazing.
It's actually amazing.
So let me tell you a little bit more about that. Pixar was a software division in Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm is the production house by George Lucas, who did the Star Wars trilogy, the original Star Wars trilogy. They created a computer software that was able to create 3D objects. They were the first people to invent that. Lucasfilm was then bought by Steve Jobs, and Pixar was formed. And Pixar was just a computing software company owned by Steve Jobs. And they, in the early 90s, they collaborated with Disney to create the one and only Toy Story. And the whole reason why they collaborated with Disney was just to show off this technology. It was like a marketing trick to show all these big businesses, oh, this is what you can do with this animation. And Pixar was then formed. Toy Story became such a huge hit. I think it might have been one of the first ever Best Picture animation to be nominated for Best Picture. And the rest is history. Disney officially bought Pixar in 2004. And they've created magic ever since.
Oh,
I mean,
that
that's
makes
a great
me so
story.
happy.
Right, here's the thing. I know it's going to sound really hypocritical. I don't mind. In fact, I love Disney and I like Pixar, and I don't mind. I'm more than happy to consume it. I've got Disney Plus and everything, and as I said, I love the MCU. My only thing with the idea of winning the Nobel Prize, I kind of feel like, particularly with things like that,
it's not the company that are winning the Nobel Prize, it's the animators winning.
Yeah, it's the
people who invented the software. They are called, let me get up, Dr. Catmull and Dr. I might be butchering their name, Dr. Hanrahan from Stanford University. So they're animators who are winning the award. So
those specific people. So technically Disney got nothing to do with it.
It's Pixar. So they were
funded by Apple and they were funded by Disney, but it's not them. It's not the companies that are winning the awards. It's the individuals who created the programs.
It's the talent.
Okay, that makes it better. Yeah.
I was actually surprised that it took them this long to be recognized because it's such a revolutionary technology. Like they changed the film industry forever because this 3D animation was later used as CGI. And they use it in so many films.
Yeah, I think as well, it's amazing because animators have only just figured out how to make water look good. and make fabric look good and make hair look good. So the fact that they created this whole technology.
No, that's what they said about Moana. Like, the reason it took so long for them to like film it, animate it, is that it, like, they spent so long working out like the details of like how Moana's hair would move in the wind when she's on the boat. And like, I have similar hair to Moana's on like a very frizzy day, so it was kind of nice to see someone with my sort of hair, and I was like, okay.
Like, another thing similar to that, like Brave, it's not the most amazing film, but each hair on Merida's head was individually like created, so every single hair was like its own asset, and it was like something ridiculous, like over like 300,000 individual hairs that they had to create and then render at any one time. And it's just like, it's so fascinating to look into.
It's a very tough job.
No, I know someone who animates fire for a living. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, like he's worked on a lot of the Disney films where like he just animates. If there's a scene where like something is burning, for example, he spent like 4 or 5 months on like each individual flame to make it as realistic as possible. It's really interesting.
That's amazing.
What an amazing job to tell someone you have.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Going back to what I know we're meant to be talking about inspirational stuff, but what a question I have for you all, actually.
Pridge, it's a happy podcast.
I do want to ask, though, I think it's quite interesting. You know, by the fact that the people at the top of the game are people like Disney and, you know, Amazon now, they're soaring high and things like that. What do you think about the fact that they get so many, they do get awards and things like that, because their moral like high ground's a little bit shaky?
I think it's possible to look at a Disney film and say, wow, the director was amazing, the animators did such an amazing job, the music is beautiful, and say, I really love this film, still not support the ethical practices of the company.
I think at the end of the day, there's nothing much that you can do. Based on the economic system that we live in, and then we live in a free market society.
I'm waiting for someone to say the sentence.
As long as it's not deemed as bad by the public.
I'm just going to say the phrase, and Millie can cut it out if she wants to, but there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. There we go. I said the phrase. I was waiting for someone to say the phrase.
The only issue I have with Amazon and Disney and whatever winning lots of awards is that a lot of the time independent film and a lot of quieter like indie films, stuff like that, don't get as much recognition, because, you know, Disney, Amazon, all these other big conglomerates, they're household names. They don't require the attention. It's nice, and I think it's right that animators should be, you know, applauded for if they've done a particularly good film, but because we have those industries or like those companies taking up so much of the attention, smaller films get overlooked almost entirely. I think that's a shame.
Much earlier, we were kind of discussing horror to a small extent, and I just wanted to highlight the production house A24.
Yes,
they are creating some truly amazing films. Like, most of them horror or thriller, with new directors, with new ideas, and they're astonishing, and they are kind of getting looked over when it comes to award seasons and stuff like that.
Yeah, so they won Best Picture for Moonlight, they did Lighthouse, Hereditary, Midsummer.
Absolutely astonishing films. Moonlight obviously won in 2016, I believe.
With that award ceremony that went wrong.
Yes. So I think if you want to support, obviously indie directors, you can find them all over YouTube, all over Vimeo, websites like GoFundMe even. You can find plenty of indie directors who are trying to get their feet off the ground, and please do go support them if it's a project you really believe in. But if you are struggling to find new directors that really like interest you, I would highly suggest just going to watch any A24 film, because all of them have been astonishing in the last few years.
Amazing.
Just do my inspirational story.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I was just going to say, so I mentioned this, I was going to talk about this before, but Irfan Khan, who is a legend in Bollywood and Hollywood and around the world, passed away, broke my heart, but he had some incredible films to see, so I'd really recommend go watching The Lunchbox. I mean, there are loads of other films as well, but you know, if you go through his filmography, you will have a pleasurable viewing experience regardless. So that was my only thing I wanted to say. That was it.
I rate him, you know. I really rate him. And he also did a lot.
That's the first positive thing Pridge has said this whole podcast.
I don't know if you know this, but in his state where he was living in America, back in like the 90s or something, he helped release like so many wild animals that were kept illegally in captivity in like people's houses. I don't know if you knew that. I don't know if any of the stats or anything like that, but he was apparently he's really influential in like getting animals released and things like that.
Oh, that's amazing.
I wasn't aware of that, but yeah, I knew that he'd done a documentary on some soldiers in Jaipur. I want to say, that could be wrong. May have fact checked that and I cut that out. But yeah, I just know that like he was like I don't know him as a person, so I can't say with perfect clarity that he was a great person. He seemed nice, and he was a great actor.
Yeah.
Aw.
That was really beautiful.
That's a really good inspirational story. And now if we move on to the next segment, the moment you've all been waiting for, even though it's the first episode and you had no idea it was coming, it's time for the film quiz.
Yay!
And now we need to come up with a team name.
What's something each of the films we suggested? Could we do something that's like references all of them?
Oh yeah,
it's lame. But
I think she should be called Down with the Bourgeoisie.
I like it. All right,
I think that's great.
Let's do it.
For the many, not the few.
So here we are in a stand for independent small films, saying "Down with the Bourgeoisie" as our team name.
Down with the what?
Bourgeoisie.
Don't know what that means.
It's basically eat the rich, Pridge.
Ah, okay, cool.
Rhymes. I like that. Eat the rich Pridge.
Yeah.
Hey, these Ray-Bans weren't cheap, you know. These Ray-Bans weren't cheap. Talk about rich.
So you will all be competing with the teams from other episodes, and at the end, the one with the most points will win a prize. We don't know what that is yet, so assume it's something really prestigious. You want to fight to the death for it. So go in with that attitude. I know Pridge is already there.
Do not like losing quizzes, mate.
We're going to bring up that competitive spirit. There will be 14 questions. There are multiple choice, so you pick between A, B, or C. You guys can discuss together. At the end, we will have a bonus round. If you get all 5 questions correct, you get an extra 3 points. And one of the quiz questions, the answers are all right or they're all wrong. So you guys need to decide which question that is.
Okay, who's ready?
Hell yeah!
Yeah.
Okay, first question. Which classic Hollywood film used asbestos, a fibrous mineral which is now banned in most countries, to film one of its iconic snow-falling scenes? Was it A, The Wizard of Oz, B, Vertigo, or C, Citizen Kane?
I don't know why, but I feel like Pridge knows the answer.
Right. As I remember, it was The Wizard of Oz. And another fact about that film, Judy Garland was 16 at the time, and she was told, as part of her diet plan, to smoke 60 cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
It was so bad. And also, the first actor that was playing the Tin Man had to go to hospital because they were using paint for his makeup that involved lead as well.
Oh, God.
It would have been very funny if you'd said he had a heart attack.
I have like a wholesome point about that film. I can't remember the name of the actress because I'm trash, but the actress who played the Wicked Witch of the West used to go into schools and do little book readings in character and she would do little events in schools where she'd go in and character as the Wicked Witch of the West and like visit all the students and stuff. And I just thought that was really cute.
I know Andy Serkis would sometimes do that as Gollum. He would like read the beginning section when everyone talks about a film that inspired them. The Wizard of Oz was my choice because I vividly remember watching as a child. I know I must have seen films before then, but The Wizard of Oz was the first one that I actually remember. I remember sitting down. I remember taking in the experience. I think it was the scene where they when it was black and white and it turns into color. That was like such a plot twist for me. I wasn't expecting it.
Can you imagine how they felt in 1939?
Yeah.
It's been like there's actual witchcraft happening in this film.
It wasn't the first it wasn't the first coloured film. The first film was called Cupid Angling, and I think it was 1908, I believe it was, maybe a bit earlier.
Mm-hmm. Something I found really interesting, I think in the late 19th century, I pretend to know things about film when I don't. You used to get the little, essentially like loads of pictures next to each other, and that would be like a film kind of thing. And there's like evidence that they used to like paint them to create like coloured films. There's still, I think you can find some like photos of them online, and it's just like really interesting how they used to try to create little like films and stuff.
Nice. Let's move on to the next question. Who is the only female Best Director winner in the Academy Award history? Is it Sofia Coppola for Lost in Translation, Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker, or Patty Jenkins for Monster?
I'm pretty sure it was Sophia Ford Coppola, Francis' daughter.
Just for like a little background on all of them, Catherine Bigelow was married to James Cameron. Sofia Coppola is the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola, who directed the Godfather trilogy, and Patty Jenkins also directed Wonder Woman.
I want to say Catherine Bigelow. That's who I instinctively feel is right.
I mean, I personally, I thought it was Sophia Ford Coppola before she came up.
I'm terrible with dates because I'm trying to think which one.
For the film.
Yeah.
I think Sophia Ford Coppola was 1992, I believe. Because The Godfather Part 3 came out in 1990, and then I'm sure that it was 2 years later she went on to win it.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I do seem to remember her, having this Raspberry Award and going on to win an Oscar.
I'm standing by Catherine Bigelow. I will fight people for this.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't mind, but I'm just saying, pretty confident it was Sophia Ford Coppola.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to push you for an answer, so you might be the decider, Kerenza.
I might just flip a coin. Give me a second, because I really don't know. I'm coming back.
Have I got a coin here? No.
This is actually really hilarious to watch because both Millie and I know the answer.
Yeah. Okay, you ready?
I'll go heads, Sahrish go tails.
Okay. It's tails, I'm going with Sahrish.
And that means you guys pick Catherine Bigelow?
Yeah.
Well, Catherine Bigelow was the right answer.
Yes!
Yeah, so that is true. The correct answer is Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker. I believe it was 2009 where she won. Yeah, so she's the only Best Director winner of all time, and no female has been nominated in the Best Director category ever since.
And I think sometimes we don't realise how many good films have had female directors. For example, American Psycho, Bend It Like Beckham, Big, Lady Bird, League of Their Own. But I think sometimes they just miss a recognition.
Yeah, I think last year it was Little Women that was really snubbed.
Little Women was snubbed. I will stand by that. It was a fantastically shot film.
It was quality. Shall we move on to the next question?
Absolutely.
This is quite an easy one. What successful animation caused one of the main characters' species to nearly go extinct after the popularity of the film? Was it A, meerkats from The Lion King, B, pandas from Kung Fu Panda, or C, clownfish from Finding Nemo?
It was C, I feel like, because I feel like this was like a massive story.
I seem to remember that as well, but See,
Nemo.
pandas are notoriously endangered, but I don't know if that's because...
I do remember like there being a massive story about like overfishing, and the same thing, they were trying to avoid the same thing happening when Finding Dory came out as well. So there was loads of like press being like, don't
I can't
get
remember
these
why
fish
I
for your
remember that, but I
children.
do remember it.
See?
Yeah.
That is correct. So after the film Finding Nemo, the clownfish became nearly extinct for the very first time in its existence. And that caused like a big, not phenomenon, but a big topic of discussion of when films use certain locations or certain animals in films, and it actually brings up a lot of negative effects. So for instance, I know in Game of Thrones, the city where they filmed King's Landing has had so many tourists in the past couple of years that it's actually destroying the structure of the city.
Yeah. I visited Split when I was interrailing, and the amount of like, you talk to locals and they were so frustrated with the Game of Thrones publicity, because obviously like it is a huge boost to their economy, but you could like see the amount of like litter everywhere and just people just not respecting the surroundings, because it's such a beautiful city.
It is such a shame. Right, let's move on to the next question.
What are James Bond's parents' nationality? Is it A, Scottish and English, B, Scottish and Finnish, or C, Scottish and Swiss?
Well, we know Scottish is right.
That's one thing we can guarantee.
Right.
I'm leaning towards Finnish, and I don't know why.
See, I was leaning towards Swiss because I
Yeah,
think I
I was
remember
leaning towards Swiss.
because I think I remember in like the young James Bond book series, he goes to Switzerland. I don't know if that's because his family is rich or like if they have actual ties there.
If y'all are leaning towards Swiss, let's go with Swiss, because I have no clue.
Well, the correct answer is C, Scottish and Swiss, so you're right.
Yay!
Yay!
You're
Guys
on,
are on a winning streak.
Smashing this!
you're
So-
on full marks so far.
Yeah.
I think was briefly mentioned in Spectre, if you've seen Spectre. Some of it was filmed in Switzerland, and there was a bit where he goes, where he mentions his family. So, yeah.
Oh, cool.
But it's funny because he's presented as this really English hero, but actually he's got no real ties to England except that's where he lives.
It was quite
Next
funny.
question.
No, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
I'm excited.
who played the park owner in Jurassic Park? Was it A, Richard Branson, B, Richard Attenborough, or C, Richard Gere?
It was Richard Attenborough.
All right, Kendra
That's
sounds
the
really confident.
hero.
I'm going to go with Kendra.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
That's the hero.
You guys are on a winning streak. That is correct.
Yay!
Wasn't his house the Attenborough building?
Okay, so David and Richard Attenborough, their dad was one of the lecturers at our university, and they used to live like on the campus, but it wasn't the Attenborough Tower. But the Attenborough Tower is dedicated to Richard Attenborough, as is the Attenborough Arts Centre.
For anyone who doesn't know, we all go to the University of Leicester.
Yeah, that probably would help.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. There's one thing I think is quite cool about the Attenboroughs is that they're the only brothers really who are like famous brothers who are so separated from each other, and to the point where they're both so famous, but you just don't pair them together in that way.
In terms of like the fields they're in.
Yeah, and even like just their stature. I mean, like I know that I'm sure there's other examples, but in the same way, like everyone else always just does seem paired together. Like the Hemsworths, they're always collectively grouped, and
Yeah, in the public consciousness, they are separated entirely because they're in such different fields and they're so well respected in both.
David Attenborough is genuinely my hero, and he came to our university to do a Remembrance Sunday thing once.
That was beautiful.
And it was, and I went to get a hot chocolate that day, and I walked past someone and I thought, that's a really familiar voice. I feel like I've heard that somewhere before. And I turned around and it was Richard Attenborough, and I could have cried.
Oh my God.
I wanted to speak to him, but I thought he's just going about his day. He won't want to talk to me right now. I don't want to meet my idols.
it was weird seeing him. It was like not seeing it, in a nice way. It wasn't like seeing a human. It was like seeing this like weird being and being like, oh, like
it's because he's just such an icon.
Obviously, it was more than when the Royals came to Leicester. Much more than that.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the next question.
So what Shakespeare play inspired West Side Story? Was it A, Hamlet, B, King Lear, or C, Romeo and Juliet?
I was going to say something. What was it? What was the one besides Romeo and Juliet? By the way, the answer is Romeo and Juliet. What was the other one?
It was Hamlet, King Lear, and Romeo and Juliet.
King Lear.
Oh yeah, it's Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
You are still full marks. Yes, Romeo and
Yay!
Juliet is the right answer. And I thought it was interesting. It took me so long to realise The Lion King was based off Hamlet.
Really?
I don't know how true that actually is.
It's been confirmed. Like, Disney's confirmed it.
And you can see it in a scene. There's one moment where Scar holds up a skull in the same way Hamlet does.
It's pretty much verbatim the story of Hamlet minus, like, people going mad.
And The Lion King 2 is based off Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, I love that film. It's trash, but I love it.
Oh, I love that film. I adore that film. Kovu and what's the other one? Kiara. I love
everyone them. Everyone was attracted to Kovu.
Yes.
And it was so confusing. He's literally alive.
Yeah. I think another one is really interesting, and from my part of the world, we have Arabian Nights, and almost everything is a rough retelling of a story that already existed there. Like a lot of Shakespeare's plays also have the origin from legends. And
I'm really glad you mentioned Arabian Nights. I love that whole, like, everything about it. I love it. I literally will read it every year because it's done fantastically.
So it's a collection of stories and legends, urban legends for all across the Middle East. And the way it's told, in Arabic it's called 1,000 Nights and One Night, Alf Layla wa Layla. And it's this lady, so there's this really evil king, and what he does is he wants like a virgin wife. He gets a new one every night, sleeps with her, and the next day he kills her, a bit like Henry VIII. And it's this lady's turn to be...
she's the daughter of the Vizier, right? I want to say.
I don't remember what Shahrazad was. I know her name's Shahrazad.
Yeah, I think she's the daughter of like the Grand Vizier, because I think they were running out of women, basically.
Yeah.
Well, it was someone to do with the royal household or something like that.
Yeah. So the king has her Shahrazad for this one night. And she decides that, I don't want to be killed off or just thrown away the next day. So what she does is she tells him a story, but she doesn't get to the ending. He's like, I need to go to bed. We'll continue the story tomorrow. So every night she tells him a story, but never really gets to the ending and pushes it for one more day. And after 1,000 stories in one night, he falls in love with her and they live happily ever after.
Aladdin's one of those stories, I believe.
So a lot of very famous stories and a lot of plays also. I don't know which Shakespearean plays, but some aspects in Shakespearean plays were...
I heard there was an article, I want to say in about 2010 or something, where a writer and a journalist said that I think there were only like, I want to say 7 to 11 original stories in the world.
Yeah, I read that article.
Yeah, and that every story is like has a variation on one of those themes. And when you read the list as well, you can find one of those themes in every story ever told, and you're like, yeah, fair enough.
I guess example of that is like the TV Tropes website, and you just go through and you can just see like the amount of tropes that are in different stories. Even like these beautiful stories or these masterpieces, you can find like at least 10 different tropes in all of them.
Yeah, isn't it the phrase, there's nothing new under the sun?
Yeah.
Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
In what American city is Hairspray set? Is it A, Detroit, B, Baltimore, or C, New Jersey?
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Jersey.
Baltimore.
Oh, wait, what? Sorry.
Good morning, Baltimore.
I watch that film once a year, so yeah.
Where is Baltimore? Is it in Pennsylvania?
Maryland, isn't it?
Maryland, that's it.
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next question. Oh, this is one of my favourite questions. So what famous children's book was adapted into a Soviet film in 1985? A, Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, B, The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, or C, Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne?
Soviet film.
Yes.
Did you say? I feel like
Winnie the Pooh's a stretch, but
Winnie the Pooh almost feels, because it's about, sharing and the joy of like, or, do you know what I mean? It's about like joy and like friendship. So it feels like a sensible thing to like twist almost. So I'm thinking, so like The Hobbit is too complex to turn it into a Soviet film, I think.
there are like those weird 1980s animated Hobbit films.
yeah, I don't know. Alice in Wonderland, just to me, would be my ideal guess. But
You guys are saying Alice in Wonderland, so we'll go with Alice in Wonderland.
Okay, well, the correct answer is The Hobbit.
I was right!
Were they like... You are technically correct. There was an USSR Alice in Wonderland, but it was it was earlier than 1985.
Oh.
So in 1985, it was The Hobbit. It is glorious if you look it up. It's, as Kerenza was saying,
It's so weird. It's so weird. Because I remember seeing the clips being used in like weird YouTube videos and stuff and being like, what is this? And then they were like, yeah, it's like...
yeah, so you can look it up. It's very entertaining. It's
is.
a low-budget teleplay as well, to make it even better. So it's very badly made, and it's just amazing. The hobbits look horrific, like something out of a nightmare. So we go to the next question.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Based on an urban legend, which famous Hollywood director was banned from Disneyland? Was it A, Stanley Kubrick, B, Quentin Tarantino, or C, Alfred Hitchcock?
right,
My instinct is A or B.
right. No, Quentin Tarantino was banned from Disneyland on the release of The Hateful Eight and the release of Star Wars. But there's a fun story behind this. Basically, he loved the Hollywood Cinerama Dome on Sunset Boulevard. He loved it, and so the week of Christmas, he had that whole cinema booked for showings of The Hateful Eight. And Disney said, "You know what? We're actually going to do it instead." And so they basically said to the company who runs Hollywood Cinerama and said, "Listen, if you don't put Star Wars on, we're taking Star Wars out every single cinema of yours."
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and basically had a huge feud, and Tarantino was banned. My thinking is the urban legend behind Stanley Kubrick getting banned was of his treatment of Shelley Duvall in The Shining. Alfred Hitchcock, I mean, he was a bit shady to one of the actresses in The Birds, I think it was. But
the reason why I don't think it's Alfred Hitchcock was because Walt Disney himself was still alive then, and he would have no qualms about the way that the actress was treated, because Walt Disney was famously a terrible person. So that's what my thinking is.
Before the options came up, my thought was Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah.
But see, I think it's Hitchcock.
Instinct. Really? Why?
He directed, I want to say, is it Psycho? Did he direct Psycho?
Yeah, he directed Psycho.
Like, I think Disney was like so sort of repulsed almost by Psycho. And they sort of banned him as like a punishment for making it.
Okay.
I think.
That's an interesting theory.
I think it wasn't his behavior per se. I think it was just he directed the film, so they were like, well, anyone who directs that film just can't be in.
Is Disneyland like Florida? California. Yeah, because that was the first one that was opened.
So Walt Disney created Disneyland. It was part of it. It was, I think, halted because of World War II. But it had been in the makes for like decades.
So yeah, I agree with Pridge that I don't think it would be Tarantino.
We'll go with Alfred Hitchcock then.
Oh,
I could be wrong, but
very long debate. You guys have picked C, Alfred Hitchcock, and that is correct.
Hey, well done, Sahrish.
Thank you.
So Walt Disney was apparently so horrified by the making of this film, and it was so anti what the Disney beliefs and foundations were, that he apparently asked for him to be banned from Disneyland. And this is an urban legend, of course, but That was correct. You guys almost missed it.
Well done, Sahrish.
The answer, there was also a trick. The question also gave something away. The question was phrased, was banned from Disneyland. So Quentin Tarantino should have been automatically not being an option because he's the only living director.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
That's true.
Let's move on to the next question. So what film is not banned in China? Back to the Future, Ben-Hur, or Christopher Robin?
Christopher Robin famously is, because it was
so
when...
so it's Back to the Future because all time travel things are. So it's Ben-Hur, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
I'm afraid you guys missed your option.
Crap! No, we didn't even think!
Oh,
I'm
I
afraid
clean forgot. Oh, no.
I'm afraid all of these films are banned in China.
Yeah.
That's what my gut said as well. My gut went, no, wait, I feel like all of these would be banned.
Give me a second. I'll tell you why each and every one is banned.
The Christopher Robin one's the most interesting one. In my opinion.
So you guys, would you like to say why, Kenza?
Yeah, so it started on Twitter, I want to say. Someone posted a picture being like, the leader, I can't remember his name, but China's like leader looks kind of like Winnie the Pooh. And it became like a massive meme that just got spread everywhere. Like it was all over Twitter, it was all over Reddit, it was all over like just everywhere on the internet. And it got to the point where China banned Winnie the Pooh in China. So like you can't get any Winnie the Pooh merchandise, can't see any of the films over there.
Good old Chinese censorship. So
Back to the Future was time travel, wasn't it? Because that's why Doctor Who was banned.
Yeah.
The other one was wasn't it Hot Tub Time Machine that was banned or something?
Oh yeah, but that was for many reasons. I feel like because they've also got a thing about sexual imagery and stuff like that as well.
Was there a country that I seem to remember some country either toyed with the idea of banning or did ban Winnie the Pooh because Winnie the Pooh doesn't wear trousers?
I feel like that was a story.
That was Russia. It was
That was Russia.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
I don't know if they actually
that.
did, but it was like I think it went up to the point where it was discussed in Parliament.
Yeah. So the reason why the other three were banned. So Ben-Hur, we previously mentioned that Ben-Hur is at the time was the first film to win every single Academy Award category, and it was banned for being Christian propaganda.
Oh.
Right, yeah.
Interesting.
Back to the Future was banned because of time travel, of course.
Yep.
Christopher Robin for his association with Winnie the Pooh. But a lot of other films have been banned. For instance, The Da Vinci Code, Deadpool, The Departed, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, a whole bunch of films. So yeah.
I think there's been quite an interesting discussion with regards to like LGBT relationships in film, and how quite often, especially in family films, in order to get past like censors, not necessarily just in China but in other countries as well, with leaving things like kisses to like the last scene, or like basically making any sign that they're like in a relationship easy to just say, to change to be like a very close friendship, so that they can kind of have their cake and eat it too. I think it's kind of an interesting discussion of, should studios just bite the bullet, and because my opinion is yes, but should studios just bite the bullet and just show an actual LGBT relationship in a family film and accept the fact that they're probably going to get banned and censored, rather than trying to like toe the line?
I mean, anything if it's done in taste is okay. I mean, there's nothing. I don't think that any film should refrain from doing anything as long as it's in taste.
But I think just in regards to like family films, especially, like it's okay to have someone kiss their hetero life partner at the end of a film, but it's not okay for
Yeah, like
Yeah.
in the new Beauty and the Beast film, I remember Publicity making a really big deal about
Oh yeah.
Gaston's right-hand man. I can't remember his name
Fool.
now.
Le
Oh,
Fou,
God.
which literally translates to the fool, can I just say? So it's kind of offensive that he was the first LGBT character in the first place.
Yeah, LeFou, they kind of showed him coming into a relationship with a man, but never mentioned it, and it was all done through subtext, so that if you weren't looking for it and interpreting it a certain way, it could not be there, which I thought was a little bit of a disrespectful way to introduce a first gay character.
And especially because that is now in like the, I know it's a ridiculous thing to say, but it's like in the Guinness Book of World Records as like the first openly gay children's character or something like that. Like it's literally in there, like LeFou will always be there, and it's like, well, that's kind of offensive.
Yeah, but hopefully onwards and upwards. And I reckon the more we see family films reflecting what families actually look like, the better, since we come in all shapes and sizes.
We can move on to the next question. This is a special request from one of our contestants, and they asked for a Bollywood-based question, and here it is. How many films on average does the Indian film industry, aka Bollywood, release a year? Is it A, 300, B, 800, or C, 1,500?
What?
I'm going to C.
I'm going C. C feels right.
Really?
Yeah, you
Think
don't know
how many
films
Think
Bollywood
how many
Mad.
Hollywood releases?
Just to compare, do you guys want to know the Hollywood figure?
Yeah.
The Hollywood figure is 500. So Hollywood releases
Yeah.
about
Okay.
500 films a year.
And I'm sure Bollywood makes like the second most in the world.
I mean,
I
Bollywood
thought
is
they were
like
the most in
famous
the
for.
world. Yeah.
I mean, they're famous for like one. If you've got Bollywood actor, they've made almost 3 to 4 times the amount of films.
I think somewhere in Africa makes the most. I think it might be the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has the highest
I think
amount
about
of.
Nigeria.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
I'm not sure about
more
most,
potential.
but a lot. I've got that.
Okay.
I think I'm with Sahrish. I think C.
1,500.
Well, let's go with C.
Sahrish, you did your team proud.
Thank
It's 1,500.
That's insane.
Yeah, in comparison, they are first of all, Bollywood is the number one. They create the highest output in the world for films. And just to compare, China make around 750 films a year.
Yeah.
And Hollywood maybe about 500. So it really shows how strong the Bollywood film industry is. I think they're also one of the pretty much the most profitable film industry in the world. And although they are really popular worldwide, I'm really sad that we don't have enough Bollywood films out here in the UK. Like you'll occasionally get a Bollywood film at the showcase, but I think international films are so underrated. I think we got to see that with Parasite this year. There's just such a big pool of amazing filmmakers around the world, and I think they're getting picked up. I think more people are looking at foreign films and appreciating them.
I would say I couldn't believe how many people were talking about the fact they didn't watch foreign films because they didn't like to read subtitles.
Yes.
I mean, the sheer volume of people who just basically were saying, I don't like to read. I was like, that's a barrier to watching a foreign film? Like, oh my God.
Sometimes I like the bad dubbing, I have to admit. The bad dubbing is great sometimes. I love it.
I've always wondered how many English films or American films are in India, though. That's I always wonder, like, is that reach there really? I mean,
I can only speak from Egypt, and pretty much every single American film, or maybe not British, but almost every film made in Hollywood, you will find in Egypt, because we have independent cinemas, we have mainstream cinemas. Almost all the Hollywood films are in Egypt. They come out in Egypt.
And then also India has more than one main language. So then you've got it, like, if not dubbed, then definitely subbed. You've got Hindi, you've got Tamil, you've got Telugu, there are loads.
And there's also different budget films. So they have a lot more lower budget end films that are very quickly made, like quick output. And there's just a demand for it. So yeah.
I mean, there are loads of films, especially that like you'll have like the North Indian films, then you've got the South Indian films. And there's a real difference, by the way, in like the way they look, even in like the feel of them. They're really, really different because they're almost two separate cultures. It's the same country, but like there are so many cultures you can really tell. Just like in terms of like film, but you even like the sort of national Bollywood films that you've got, like they're mainly Hindi, but it's more like Urdu. But then you've got like random like segments where someone speaks in like heavily accented Hindi that makes it clear they're from another part of the country, or they might use a couple of lines from Tamil and Telugu that most people maybe don't know, but you can just sort of work out from the context what they're saying. It's really interesting. So.
Okay, next question. Which actor has received the most Oscar nominations ever? A. Leonardo DiCaprio, B. Meryl Streep, or C. Tom Hanks?
I thought it was DiCaprio because I swear that was like when he got his Oscar, that was like a big thing because he'd been nominated so many times and he'd never won.
I'm pretty sure he'd only been nominated for 5.
Because I knew it was a massive thing because he'd been nominated so many times, and honestly I think he deserved it for Shutter Island, but that's a whole different kettle of fish.
The thing with Leo was though that he is such a good actor, but there was always just someone who'd just done that little bit better, which was really unfortunate. But
it was the same with Roger Deakins, the cinematographer. I think he holds like one of the most Oscar nominations and losses of all time. And he only won for Blade Runner 2049. And he was snubbed. It was just the years that he was nominated in. There was just someone who was just a bit better.
Yeah. Pretty sure the answer is Meryl Streep. I'm pretty sure she's got 11 nominations and
that's fine.
1 win.
I'm happy to stick with Meryl Streep.
Wonderful. Then you are correct.
Yeah.
Yay.
I thought you guys were right.
Can anyone guess how many times she was nominated?
11, wasn't it?
It's actually 21.
I was going to say, I feel like it's way more.
She's won 3, so it's not as bad as Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
But, winning 3 out of 21, it's a tough business.
1 in 7. 1 in 7. So might be the same odds as Leo DiCaprio, actually.
Yeah. I feel like, how many has Leo been nominated for?
I think 5. He's been nominated for Wolf of Wall Street, The Revenant, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and I think The Aviator.
Wasn't he nominated for Titanic as well?
No.
I thought he was.
No,
okay.
I don't think there were any acting nominations for that one.
Okay.
Nice. Do you want to move on to the next one, Laila?
Yes, move on to question number 13. We've already spoken of this film. As we know, it's Pridge's favourite film. It's Avengers Endgame. So Avengers Endgame overtook Avatar as the highest grossing film of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I already know the answer.
How many dollars did it make, rounded up to the nearest billion? 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah.
2.97. 2.97.
That's ridiculous.
Great job, Pridge. You're doing your team proud. That was correct. Nearly.
Avatar was 2.96 or 2.94. One of the two.
I love how no one remembers anything about Avatar. Well, the whole point of Avatar was it was similar to Toy Story, which we were talking about earlier, was it's meant to showcase the amount that they could do with the new technology that they had, because it was one of the first, I don't want to say it was the first 3D film and get it wrong, but it was one of the first like 3D films that really took advantage of 3D technology and stuff like that. So for all intents and purposes, it was a way of getting people in and being like, look at what we can do.
That
Isn't
really
this pretty?
Really doesn't sell anymore, does it? Like
No.
Cats was meant to be that. Alita Battle Angel was meant to be that, but it doesn't sell anymore. No one seems to be interested, because the thing is, I guess, like, in a really terrible way to say, Hollywood's kind of run out of surprises in that sense anymore.
Yeah, it's like whenever it's like a groundbreaking technology, it's something like, you know, like how Frozen 2 had like groundbreaking fabric technology. And it's like, yes, all the dresses look beautiful and it's amazing the amount of detail they could put into the costumes for just being animated. But no one's going to go and watch a film to see the fabric physics,
No.
you know?
Moving on to the final, drum roll, and my favourite question, name 5 quotes from Shrek.
Oh yeah. That's not one of them.
I'm sure they say that at some point in the film.
What are you doing in my swamp?
This is the part where you run away.
I'm wearing ladies' underwear.
Do you see any pockets on me?
Nice.
Oh, I like that boulder. That is a nice boulder.
And Kenza, do you want to do one more just to round it
go
off?
on then. Do there are.
That is iconic. Okay, so let's tally up the scores.
I can't believe none of us said the quote by Lord Farquaad where he says that some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. And I'm just like, how did we miss that?
Anyone?
It's not the full quote, though.
Not the gumdrop buttons.
You know, the Muffin Man.
The Muffin
The Muffin Man.
Man. Well, she's married to the Muffin Man.
So well done. You've got 12 points, which is so good if you think about how obscure some of those questions were. And now, Laila, do you want to introduce our bonus round?
So yeah, every team has a bonus round. If they get all the questions correct, they get an additional 3 points. So you guys can really, really round it up to 15.
Let's go. Come on.
Go. There are 5 questions. They're all about movie quotes. The first 2 are similar to the quiz. There are misquoted movie quotes, so there'll be 3 versions of a quote. Only one of them is the correct one. And we'll only tell you at the end if you got them correct.
Oh, Christ.
We need to be slow, methodical.
First question. What's the correct quote from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs?
Okay.
Is it A, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of one of all? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of all?
The second one. It's the second one.
It's the magic mirror. Mirror isn't actually said in the film.
It says magic mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one is from The Wizard of Oz. And we have Toto, we are not in Kansas anymore. Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. Or Toto, I have a feeling we are not in Kansas anymore.
It's C. I'm pretty sure it's C.
I thought it was B.
No, that's the one. That's the Mandela effect. It's not. I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. I'm pretty sure it's C.
See, I think that fits best with the rhythm of the movie, so I'm going to go with C.
I'm pretty sure it is C.
I'm like trying to picture the scene with like each of the 3 quotes, and after doing that, yeah, I agree. I think it's C.
Okay. Now you guys need to pick out the film. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind.
Good film, that.
I've still never seen it.
Good.
I don't want you to experience joy. Okay, so the next one is, I'm a damsel in distress. I can handle this. Have a nice day.
It's Hercules.
Hercules.
I'm a damsel. I'm in distress.
I'm glad you knew that because I have not seen her.
Oh, such a good film.
Either.
For the muses alone, it is worth every second.
Yeah, and Megara. And Hades.
Hades is an icon.
An icon.
Now, final question. You need to get this one correct. No amount of money ever bought a second of time.
Oh, that's nice. Avengers Endgame. It's the bit, in case you're wondering, it's the bit when he meets his dad and he's just about to leave him just before he hugs him. And he says, like, my dad had some pretty good quotes though. And he said, got any in mind? And he goes, what's the quote again? What was it? No amount of money could buy a second of time. That was it, yeah. Avengers Endgame.
I want to be confident and say 5.
Yeah.
You got it all right.
Drum roll.
Yes.
Congratulations, you got all 5 correct. Extra points, which rounds you up to 15 points.
Nice.
I think this is going to be a really hard one to beat, actually.
I mean, they were good questions, in fairness. I had to really think about them.
now we've finished the quiz, we thought we'd give you an opportunity. So if there's anything you wanted to discuss earlier but didn't get the chance, now's your time to bring it up.
I have one thing I want to discuss. One thing. Only because I know Kerenza's a huge sort of advocate for indie filmmakers and, smaller production companies and things like that. Interesting. Susan Wojcicki, is that the name? The YouTube CEO?
Wojcik, yeah, YouTube.
She said that by 2022 she wants YouTube to have its first Oscar.
I don't think it will, because the films that YouTube are turning out aren't great. But it depends on who they ask to make the next ones, to be fair.
I mean, YouTube has definitely got the money to spend, and I'm with you, Kerenza. I think it's very, very sad that no one's getting a look in anymore. Or it's going to be like, because
it's impossible to get ahead on YouTube at the minute. So, like, my biggest thing is please support creators that you believe in. There are so many really talented animators and short film makers and musicians and reviewers. I could plug as many channels as I wanted right now, like Philosophy Tube and ContraPoints, and people that make like amazing high quality content. A director, I can't remember his name, but he made the film Lights Out, basically, and he started out on YouTube making short films, and then one of his short films called Lights Out went viral, basically. And he ended up getting picked up by Universal to have a film contract and stuff like that. And he's now creating, like, Lights Out got semi-decent reviews. It's not an amazing film, but he's now, like, working on more films, and he's getting better and better as a director. Like, you can literally see his, like, critic scores going up. He's really successful now. So, like, when I say support your creators, that's kind of what I mean. Like, by even just like giving a video that you like a like out, or by giving them $1 on Patreon or something like that, it does make a huge difference to like these really talented people's lives.
Yes, support your creators. Keep the film industry alive. And now it is time for the performances. We are all about the arts, so at the end of every episode we're going to have someone performing poetry, some music, maybe even a monologue, and we're just going to share some talent and creativity.
And this week we've got our very own Rebecca Hughes playing a piano version of Can You Feel the Love Tonight, which was first used in Disney's 1994 animated film The Lion King. And I think it was composed by Elton John and the lyrics were by Tim Rice. Can everyone give a round of applause for Becky?
amazing.
What
Yeah.
a cutie.
It's so nice that she took some time off to provide us with something so beautiful.
Very nice rendition of it as well. It's always nice when it's done on the. I always like things done more when they're instrumental on like a singular instrument.
Another thing we want to talk about is we wanted to promote a charity each week, and it's completely up to you, but it'd be wonderful if someone could give £2 or less, and it would make such a difference. And the charity we're talking about this week is Soft Touch.
Yeah, so Soft Touch Arts are a charity based in Leicester. You can find them on New Walk if you walk into town. They are a great charity where they use arts and different media outlets and all sorts of activities for people who are a bit more disadvantaged communities. So people with disabilities have the opportunity to engage with art. And we, I think, as a society have supported them before. And there should be a link at the bottom of this podcast, whether it's at the YouTube page or our Facebook page, so you can donate anytime you like. And yeah, they're a great organisation. It would be lovely if you could support them.
Oh, amazing.
We're reaching the end of our podcast, and thanks so much to everyone for taking part and giving us your time.
Thank
Yeah,
you
you
for
guys-
having me.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun
very
to be
much.
here.
This is the Brightside podcast, created by me, Millie Henson, produced by Laila, Eldarwish, and co-hosted by Matthew Harper and Rebecca Hughes. This podcast focuses on positivity and the wonderfully weird things our world has to offer. Thank you so much for listening.